Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to a new school year. This is Ben Weisner, your host and presenter for this afternoon's presentation. Thank you for joining me for our webinar, Read Live 2.1 Basics. I'm a senior member of the Read Live team, and my job is to educate and support teachers and administrators who are using our program with their students. Here's some contact information. You can reach me after our session via email or at my direct desk number. So this afternoon I'm going to provide you with an overview of Read Live. I'll talk about planning and resources you'll need to use Read Live effectively with your students. I'll show you how to get students started in the program. I'll show you how students use the program in a demonstration lesson. I'll show you how to access reports so you can monitor progress. And I'll show you where you can find additional Read Naturally online resources. Many of them are free. And as part of my demo today, I'm going to walk through some of the changes we've made in the latest update to the Read Live program, version 2.1, which was released on September 2nd. We've got a lot to cover, so given our time constraints today, our presentation will not include real-time Q&A, but please do ask your questions using the questions tool in your meeting panel on the right side of your screen. And I'll make an effort to get back to as many of you as possible in the coming days with email responses. You should have all received the link to the handouts for today's meeting. The handouts are also available from the meeting panel if you'd like to download and print them out now. Many of you have also asked about a recording of this webinar. I'm recording the presentation and sending out a follow-up email with links to the recording and handouts in about 24 hours. So look for that in your inbox. Feel free to share the recording with anyone at your school or district who you think would benefit from this very valuable information. Also, at the end of our session, you'll be asked to provide us with feedback about today's webinar via a very short survey. If you could, please respond to the survey so we can continue to improve the webinar experience for all of you in the future. And finally, if you're having technical difficulties, please contact Gotowebinar support. Their phone number is listed at the bottom of the meeting panel. And now, without further delay, let's get started with today's Read Naturally webinar. So a quick overview of what Read Live is. Read Live is a comprehensive research-based reading intervention program. Read Live was developed by Read Naturally and has been around in thousands of schools with a successful track record of more than 25 years. An important aspect to recognize about Read Live is that it provides differentiated instruction for response to intervention programs, particularly for tiers 2 and 3. It is a web-based platform, so you can use it anywhere that you have an appropriate device and an internet connection, and that means standard PCs, Macs, Chromebooks, and even iPads if you have a free iPad app from the iTunes store that you can just download. So an important aspect of our program today is to talk about and demonstrate what's new in Read Live 2.1. So Read Live version 2.1 was re-engineered with the most current technologies and web standards to ensure its longevity, stability, and scalability as more schools across the country are using Read Live for their struggling and developing readers. What have we done in this release? Probably the most significant change was the removal of Adobe Flash from the application. Removing Flash improves Read Live's security rating and ensures Read Live won't be impacted as web browsers reduce their support of Flash Player. We freshen up our look, so we've improved navigation and responsiveness to changes in screen resolution for the staff member module. Filtering and finding information are easier than ever. Licensing is much simpler. Licenses no longer need to be distributed to staff members before being assigned to students. Roles are also simplified. We've made it even easier to add new staff members. The data entry role has gone away. Other roles like helper or school administrator have been combined or renamed. Assigning homerooms to students is much simpler. Accounts no longer need to enroll multiple staff members who aren't using Read Live just to group students into homerooms. Restricting access to only those who are working in the program helps protect student privacy. Improvements to reporting include the ability to download the Students at a Glance report as a CSV file, which is viewable in Microsoft Excel. And most reports and documents printed from ReadLive no longer trigger browser pop-up blockers. Some important information to note, most of which has been communicated over the past month or so through emails and in-app messages. If you had students who were in progress in the story module, and those stories were reset as a part of transitioning to the new version of the program, that student may have lost work when their in-progress stories were reset. If that happened to one of your students, we've listed a few options in the latest blog article about the release. The Read Naturally Live iPad app has been updated. You'll want to head to the App Store and install the latest version of the app at your earliest convenience. This version includes minor fixes. Scheduled imports of student data will take place during off-peak hours. That's for those of you who want to import student data. Moving intensive activities like importing to off-peak hours will improve system performance and stability for the entire community of ReadLive users. Also, the first time you log into the staff member module, you may need to enter your account ID on the login page, but just that first time. After your first login, the software will once again remember your account ID. The address for the ReadLive staff member module has changed. If you've set a browser bookmark to the staff member login page, you'll need to recreate it. And if you run into any issues, try clearing your browser's cache. That may help resolve some of the problems. So, later I'll demo some of the new interface components of the staff member module, but let's continue with our presentation. So, Read Naturally Live, the intervention that's embedded into ReadLive, is a research-based, interactive reading intervention. It has motivating content for reluctant readers from 1st through 12th grade. We have 3 curriculum series, which I'll talk about momentarily, with 23 reading levels available to your students. You have the ability to customize the program for individual student needs. We have extensive reports to assist you in tracking progress. You can work in the program with groups or one-on-one. You can use Read Naturally Live in blended classroom environments. You have the ability to turn on a Spanish translation for the read-along for some of the levels in the sequence series. And all of the content presented in Read Naturally Live consists of high-interest nonfiction text. So what is the strategy behind Read Naturally Live? A student will begin by getting a baseline for progress monitoring. The student will read the story for the first time to get his or her cold score. This is a timed reading, and the resulting score represents the number of words the student read correctly in a minute. The score is then recorded on a graph in blue. The teacher modeling piece occurs as the student reads along with an audio recording of the story, subvocalizing with the narration until the student is able to read the story without errors. Usually, the student reads along 2 or 3 times, but this varies depending on the age and the ability of the student. Next, the student repeatedly times himself or herself reading the story aloud, using the scores to check progress. The student will keep reading the story until he or she can read at the individual goal rate that the teacher set. A student who reaches the goal moves on to answer some comprehension questions and then continues to practice while waiting for the teacher. Finally, the teacher listens to the student read. The student who reads with expression at the goal rate with 3 or fewer errors and who answers all of the comprehension questions correctly will pass the story. The HOT score is graphed in red, giving the student visual feedback on how much improvement was made by working on the story. Over time, a student should show gradual improvement in both the cold and hot scores. Combining these 3 strategies, teacher modeling, repeated reading, and progress monitoring, in this way can have dramatic results for your developing and struggling readers. So the curriculum series that are available to you within Read Naturally Live include the sequence series, the phonics series, and the idiom series. And as I mentioned earlier, you have 23 levels to work in. The sequence series is our most commonly used series. It starts with a level 1.0 and moves up through 8.0. You can see that the levels increase in half-grade reading level increments, and each level consists of 24 passages. And I'll be demonstrating a lesson from one of the sequence series levels. The Spanish translation is available for levels 1.0 through 4.5 in the sequence series. That allows you to optionally turn on, for the read-along step, Spanish text and a Spanish-speaking narrator that the student can listen to and read along with before they move to the English version of the read-along. If you have students reading at or below a third grade reading level, the phonics series is a good choice. It still focuses on fluency, has a comprehension and vocabulary component, but also provides phonics support. As you can see, each of the levels will focus on a specific phonics family or phonics element. And then finally, if you need more content at levels 3.0 through 4.5, and or you have students who are English language learners, the idiom series is also a very good option. The difference in the idiom series is that the content revolves around 3 to 4 American language idioms. If you have students who are beginning readers, and as you assess them in the program, when you try to place them, if they are still below a level 1.0, during the placement, they can still work and read naturally if they can recognize 50 written words and no beginning sounds. So, how do you determine which of your students needs extra help in order to become automatic readers? The Hasbrook and Tyndall table that you see here in front of you can help you find out. This table shows the reading development of typical students across the United States. It's based on the work of Jan Hasbrook and Gerald Tyndall, who combined data on thousands of students from across the country to create the norms that you see here. This table shows the oral reading fluency norms for students in grades 1 through 8 as reported by Hasbrook and Tyndall. As we look at the chart, keep in mind that it's the trends that are important, not individual numbers. Take a look at the second graders in the fall who are in the 75th percentile. They read 79 words correct per minute on average. Look across that line and what happens throughout the year. You can see the number of correct words per minute increases throughout the year over the fall and winter to spring. You'll notice that the same pattern occurs for the students in the 50th percentile and in the 25th percentile. However, what do you notice when you compare the spring results of the students in the 25th percentile to the fall results of the students in the 75th percentile? There's a big gap here. At the end of the year, the struggling readers are still below where the proficient readers were at the beginning of the year. You can use this table to draw conclusions and make decisions about the oral reading fluency of your own students. Students likely need a fluency building intervention that supports comprehension and vocabulary if they score 10 or more words below the 50th percentile, using the average score from 2 or 3 unpracticed readings from grade level material. So once you've determined who needs to use Read Naturally Live, you'll want to set up your workspace and schedule. Implementing Read Naturally can be performed either in a regular classroom, a computer lab. Students can even use the program at home with parental support. We typically recommend a teacher-to-student ratio of 1 teacher or 1 adult to 8 students. That ratio may vary depending on the age and the independence of the students, but that's a rough guideline. And as far as scheduling is concerned, we recommend 30 minutes per session, 3 to 5 days a week. You can see incredible gains with students if you're using it with Fidelity and you're using it consistently according to our guidelines. One of the handouts that I provided for you is our Fidelity Checklist, and I strongly recommend keeping that by you as you are implementing the program. If you have not already done so and you've used the program last year, you'll want to start a new school year within Read Naturally Live. That allows you to advance students to the next grade, assign homerooms and lead teachers, and reassign licenses to students. You can find more information about starting a new school year in our knowledge base, and I'll refer to that when I demonstrate the staff member module to you as well. That's primarily information for the account administrator. So, once we've determined who needs to use the intervention, once we have set up our schedule, now we're ready to get our students up and running with Read Naturally Live. So there are 3 simple steps that teachers can perform: adding students, placing students, and teaching students how to use the program. And I'll talk about all 3 as we run through our demo lesson. The Read Naturally Live steps that you see here are a reiteration of what I spoke about earlier when I talked about the Read Naturally strategy. This is a teaching aid that you can use in the classroom for your students. This is a poster that you can download from our website, and I'll show you a little bit later where you can find it in our resources page. But you can also order one of these in poster size to hang up in your classroom as well if you wish. But the 8.5 by 11 version is free for download as a PDF file. So without further ado, I'm going to step out of my PowerPoint slideshow and show you how the program works. So when you're ready to begin working, you will go on your web browser to readlive.readnaturally.com, and as long as you have your account ID and login credentials, you can log in as a staff member. You can access this from a standard web browser or from on a regular Mac or a PC, or from Chromebooks. If you're using iPads, the iPad version of the program is really only suitable for students, not for staff members. So I'll begin by clicking on the staff member button and logging in as if I were an administrator for this account. So when you're logging in as the administrator, you'll see a welcome screen. The welcome screen allows you to go to an orientation and resources page, and this will provide you with more information about the steps you need to get up and running. So at a minimum, account administrators will add schools and staff members and add students. If you're an account administrator who also works with students, you may also want to place them and teach them how to use the program. There are links throughout orientation and resources that will bring you to more information about a specific topic, like more information about roles. There are 4 roles available, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Or you can go directly to the Read Live help page, where you can find resources like videos, online training, etc. And I'll talk about this help page a little bit later. Otherwise, if you aren't going to the orientation and resources page, you'll go to the home page. And this is where you see what we call tiles that assist you in performing the tasks you need to perform. These tiles, there are 7 of them here, are mirrored from this navigation menu in the upper left-hand corner. So you don't necessarily need to be on the home page to navigate to these different sections. You always have access to them from this menu. So let's take a look at some of these tiles. Account and school administration, again, this is for the account administrator. This is where you would add new schools. And we've simplified the information necessary when you're adding schools and staff members. All you need to do here is add a school name, and then either reserves a specific number of licenses, or you can just have licenses freely available to any school that you create. So again, you can reserve a specific number for any specific school, or you can just have a pool of licenses open and available to any school that you've entered into the program. So as you can see here, these schools have a specific number of licenses, and you can see how many have already been assigned to students. So let's use our navigation menu and move over to the staff member administration. This is where you add new staff members or delete staff members that you want to remove from the system. If staff members have forgotten their password, you can just click on reset, and that sends them a new temporary password they can use to log into the system. When you're adding new staff members, we have simplified the number of roles available. You can either add an additional account administrator, a school coordinator who would have advanced rights for their particular school, including adding, editing staff members. So that would be above and beyond what the teacher can do. The teacher can work with students primarily, adding and licensing them, placing them, running reports, etc. And then finally, Read Live Assistant. If you've used the program last year or the year before, we had a role called Helper. So this takes the place of Helper. It's basically anyone who you want to allow rights to listen to students read and score cold and hot timings. So that may be a classroom volunteer or a parent, for example. So that was staff member administration. Under student administration, this is where you will do things like start a new school year, import students, create new homerooms. So these are tasks that are available. All of these are available to the account administrator. The school coordinator would also be able to do things like create homerooms or import students. So one very important thing to note about our new user interface is how you find information. It may not be very apparent initially, but we've changed how we do something called filtering. Filtering is just another word for finding information. The filters are available from these little filter menu icons. They look like 3 bars stacked on top of each other. And to bring up a filter, you just click on that 3-bar icon, and the filter will appear. So in this case, if I wanted to find just my active students, I would select active from the drop-down and click Apply Filter, and that's how we do that. If we ever want to remove the filter, we click on that menu icon again and click Clear Filter. I'll do that again. And then there are other kinds of filters. So if you want to find a specific student name, let's say I just want to find students whose name begins with B. And my previous filter also remains persistent. And you can also click on the column heading to sort the columns as well. So I'm going to clear this filter. Okay, so this on the student administration page, this is where you can add new students. And one of the things that we've done in this new version of the program is we've flattened out how we allow you to license students. So now you can license a student immediately when you create them. You can also license them in groups, but if you're a teacher or an account administrator, when you create the student, you immediately are allowed to license them if your school has licenses. So it's that simple. The other thing to note is There is a new nomenclature for program teacher. Program teacher, or in this case, lead teacher, are the teachers that are responsible for placing the students into the appropriate level and assigning them a goal, and are also responsible for running reports for progress monitoring purposes. So if you are the account administrator, when you license the student, you can immediately determine which teacher should be their lead teacher. So those are the primary changes in 2.1 as far as licensing, adding a new student, etc. You license them immediately when you create them, and account administrators no longer have to distribute licenses to teachers. Other tasks that you can perform here include changing status. So in other words, changing students from active to inactive or inactive to active. Obviously you have to select that student first. And in fact, let me do that for this student. So I'm going to click on her name and then click Change Status for Selected. I'll select Inactive. And now she's removed from my list. She's still in the program. Her data has not been deleted. She simply moved to an inactive list. And of course, I can always find that by coming back here and selecting Inactive from my filter. Other things that you can do here are change grade, change homeroom, change school, and delete selected students. You can also create groups of students. Again, another useful way to find students. So for example, in this case, after you create the group name, you simply click on Add Students to Group, and you can add them from the list of available students for your school or schools. That way, when you are running reports or when you're looking for a group of students, for example, go back to Student Administration and say, I want to just find students in 4th period, you use the little group filter up at the top. And then finally, for now anyway, the Read Naturally Live screen. This is where you perform things like placing students, changing levels and goals, resetting their stories if they're stuck in a story. This is also where you can print the stories and perform parent communication tasks like printing out progress letters, welcome letters, and printing awards. I'll come back to this screen when we log in as a teacher. So that's primarily the interface changes for account administrators. We flattened things out, we've made things easier to find, etc. I'm going to log in as a teacher now. And as you can see, there are fewer tiles for teachers. We had 7 for the account administrators, and here it's much simpler. You either go to Student Setup where you add your students, go to Groups where you can group your students, or go to Read Naturally Live where you do things like placing students, etc. So let's do a placement. I'll show you how that works. I mentioned earlier that Flash was removed from the program. Flash was integral to placement in previous versions. So now when you go to place students, you no longer will see that kind of obstructive Flash download message that you had seen previously. So if I want to place this student, Elaine Ballum, I'll click on the Place button. I will begin with a level that I think she may work well in. Of course, I may have to change that as she takes her placement test and may not reach the required score for working in this level. But let's start with level 3-5 as a starting point. Also note that you can now click on these information icons that tell you which series are available for each of these levels. Right? So for some levels, level 3, for example, you can either work in sequenced, phonics, or idioms, but in some of the upper levels, you only have one series to work in. So let's try level 3-5. I'll click Next. So in this case, Elaine and I are sitting in front of the computer screen. When Elaine is ready to begin reading, I'll click on the Start Timing button. And notice as I move my cursor, the reading guide, which you can turn off if you wish, tracks the cursor, and that's helpful for some students. So all I'm doing as Elaine is reading to me is counting the number of words that she mispronounced, skipped, or stopped on for more than a few seconds. We use the stop, stumble, skip rule. Later, when I show you the resources on our Read Live help page, I'll show you a more complete description of how to count errors. So we're simply going to wait for the 1-minute timing bell to go off as Elaine is reading, and once that bell rings, I'll click on the last word that she read correctly, and that will give us our score, and I'll type in the number of missed words or enter the number of missed words here, and that will give us our words correct per minute score.
Click on the last word you read when the bell sounded.
So let's say she read up to the word microscope. That's 79 words. Let's say she missed 7 words. So her final score is 72. Then I'll click Next. On the left side, it shows me the results. Shows me the different ranges for the different placement testing levels. In this case, I tested her at level 3-5. So her range should be within the 60 to 80 words correct per minute range, and it is. And in this case, I simply select the series that I want her to work in. Notice how the level and the goal are the same. For the goal, the program simply added 30 words to her score, rounded down to 100. If she were in 5th grade or above, we would have added 40 words to her score. So after we select the series level and goal, we click Next, click OK, and as you can see, for Elaine, her information is automatically entered by the program. If you ever want to adjust series level and goal, you'll click on Edit under the assignment column and make your change here. So over time, maybe her fluency rate is increasing. You can just bump up her goal from this screen, click Save and Close, and that changes it. And as I said, if the student gets stuck in a story, let's say the goal is too high for her and she's practicing multiple times and still can't move beyond the practice step, you can reset that story, perhaps move her goal down if necessary, and have her begin again. One thing that I haven't spoken about, which I'll speak about briefly but then return to, and that is the report screen. This is where you can access a variety of reports to assist you in monitoring student progress. And as I said, I'll return, but this is one very important area for teachers to know that they have access to. Okay, I'm going to log out here. And now I'm going to go to my landing page again and log in as a student. And we're going to run through a lesson, and I'll show you how students and teachers work together during their time together in Read Naturally Live. So students, after they've been placed, they have a series level and goal, they have an appropriate device, they can work mostly independently after you've shown them how to use the program. So they will also need to have their account ID, user ID obviously, and a password.
Please select a story.
Now remember I said that there are 24 nonfiction passages in each level in our Sequenced and Phonics series. Students see 12 passages at a time. After they've completed 12, they can roll over to the next set, or the teacher can move them from set to set using this button at the bottom center of the screen. If you want to see what the other stories look like in the other set, you can just use your teacher credentials. Now we're still on the same level, we just moved to a different set of stories. You can see that in this case, Melissa has completed 3 passages are ready. Once they're completed, they're marked as passed and they cannot be clicked on again. Up at the top, you'll see the level and goal. There's a teacher menu, which I'll refer to later. The log out, very important, students log out when they're done. Audio instructions available in the lower left.
Please select a story.
And when they're ready to begin, they just click on the icon that they want to start reading. The icon for the story that they want to start reading.
Zebras.
Are you ready to start this story?
I'll click yes.
Click each key word to learn the word and what it means.
So up at the top of the screen, you'll notice the progress bar that shows the student what step they're currently on. You can turn off steps in story options, which I'll demonstrate for you momentarily. And if you do turn off a step, the progress bar on the screen will indicate that that step has been turned off. In the lower right-hand corner, you can see the next button is dimmed, so students cannot move forward until that next button has been made available, and that won't happen until they've completed the objective for the screen that they're currently on. So in this case, I have to click on each one of these key vocabulary words and listen to their definition.
Pattern. A pattern is a set of things, like colors, shapes, lines, or sounds, that is repeated.
And you can see after I click on a word, the little star next to it is highlighted in yellow.
Recognize. Recognize means to know what something is after seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, or tasting it. Alex knows Mom is baking cookies because he can recognize the smell coming from the kitchen.
All of these words will appear in the story. We'll also introduce additional vocabulary words in the read-along and the quiz steps.
Species. Species are groups of plants or animals that are alike in certain ways. Mammals include many species, such as lions, giraffes, and humans.
And then finally, when I click zoologist, that next button should display.
Zoologists. Zoologists are people who study animals.
Click a word again, or click next to continue. Look at the story title, key words, and picture. Write a prediction about the story. Then, click next to continue.
So the prediction asks the student to type what they think the story is going to be about based on the title, one or more keywords, and the picture. They have 2 minutes to complete this step. You can adjust the amount of time that they have, so if students have trouble keyboarding, you can always increase the amount of time, or if you feel like time would be better spent performing a different activity, you can simply turn off this step. How do you do that? If you go up to the teacher menu, type in your credentials, you come to a set of tasks that you can perform while the student is logged in, including changing story options. So this is where you might, again, add some additional minutes for the prediction and or the retell. You can also here change the number of required read-alongs. The default number is 3. I've changed it to 0 so that we don't have to sit through an entire read-along. This is also where you might turn on the Spanish read-along, as I mentioned earlier, etc. So you can individualize instruction for each of your students using this screen. This screen is also available from the staff member module from the Read Naturally Live page. And when we go back to the staff member module, I'll point that out again. But here, again, you can do this in real time when the student is already logged into the program. Other things that you can do here are print stories, print awards, see how the student is performing up to this point, change levels and goals, reset story, and retest the hot timing. So I'm going to get
Look
back
at the
to my
story
screen.
title, key words, and picture. Write a prediction about the story. Then, click next to continue.
So I'm going to type something into this box, and click Next to move forward.
Play Wordtastic while you wait for your teacher. Click the best answer to score points. Click on the words you don't know to hear them read to you.
So the next step, as you can see in the progress bar, is called cold timing. This is where we time the student for 1 minute on the unpracticed passage and receive a score. That score will be used to determine progress over time, the cold timing score. But typically, and by default, we have teachers working with students during this step. So up to this point, student could have been working independently, but for the cold timing, teacher is required. You can also change that in the story options, but let's assume teacher is required here. And if the student is waiting for the teacher, we want to keep him engaged and motivated working in the program, so we provide this waiting time activity called Wordtastic. Sometimes there's some confusion here. How long should a student be on the screen? The student has completed 60 to 70 words and they're still not moving forward. Well, what has to happen before a student can leave the screen is you have to come over and type in your login credentials to move them forward. Remember, this is a waiting activity for students to work in while they wait for you to come and listen to them for the cold timing. Having said that, let's see how this works. So students get points for correct answers. It's synonym and antonym matching. If they miss a question,
risk.
That question will repeat a little bit later on during students' work in this level. And as I demonstrated, you can also click on words.
Reward. Contest.
To hear them spoken aloud. So again, when you are available, you'll come by and click Conduct Cold Timing, type in your login credentials. And now you and the student are sitting together, and you're going to be listening to the student read for 1 minute, just like you did in placement. The primary difference here is how we count errors. And by that I mean just the mechanics of counting errors. We still do the stop, stumble, skip rule. Here's where you can turn on or off the reading guide. I'll click Start Timing. Student is reading aloud. 1 minute timing is in progress. And if a student misses a word, instead of just jotting it down on a separate sheet of paper or counting on your fingers, here you're going to click on that word.
Zebra. Purposes. Camouflage.
So what happens when I click on the word? The word is underlined. It's spoken aloud by the narrator. It's subtracted from the raw score to give us a words correct per minute score. We'll also be keeping track of these words that are clicked on during the cold timing and the practice steps so that they are available in the reports for your review. So very important to start identifying these difficult words, very important to start emphasizing that accuracy is a key component of fluency. After 1 minute is up, we'll click on the last word the student read correctly, and that will give us our cold timing score.
Click on the last word you read when the bell sounded.
And then that cold timing score will be represented in a graph, as we'll see.
Click Next to continue.
So this student scored 87 words correct per minute.
Look at how many words you read correctly per minute. Click Next to continue.
And you can see the score compared to the student's goal of 120, so they know that they have to close this gap as a requirement for passing.
Click Start Read Along to read along, or click Next to continue.
So once the cold timing is complete, you can move and work with another student if you wish, and now this student, Melissa, can continue working independently. The next two steps, read along and practice, represent the heart of the Read Naturally strategy. Read along is where the student reads along with the narrator, modeling their pace and their expressiveness. Students start reading at a slower pace and then pick up the pace during the subsequent read-alongs. There are 3 read-alongs by default. You can adjust that in story options, either raising or lowering depending on the student's needs. Again, students normally would not be able to click on Next until they've completed all the read-alongs. In between each read-along, students have access to vocabulary words. Some of these they were introduced to earlier in the keyword step, and some of these are new, like camouflage.
Camouflage. Camouflage is a way of hiding something by making it look like the things around it.
So once they're ready to begin reading, they'll have a set of headphones on, and they will read quietly but actively, subvocalizing, lips moving, vocal cords vibrating.
Most people know that zebras are wild horses with stripes and that they live in Africa. But did you know that of all the zebras in the world, no two look exactly alike?
Click Start Read Along to read along again.
And so the program keeps track of how many read-alongs have been completed. So let's say a student has completed 2 out of the 3 read-alongs and classroom time is ended. They can simply log out, and the next time they log back in again, whether it's at home or whether it's in the classroom, they'll simply pick up where they've left off. When they've completed the read-along, they'll move to practice.
Click Start Timing and begin reading. Click on the words you don't know to hear them read to you. Click Finished if you finish reading before the bell sounds.
So practice is another one of the research-based components of the Read Naturally strategy. Repeated reading, students read the passage multiple times, gradually increasing their rate and their accuracy. Again, this is performed independently. The next button is dimmed. They cannot move forward until they reach their goal. They can, however, click back if they want to review with the read-along. The practice step is a great place to determine if students are making progress. They have to read between 3 to 10 times to reach their goal, and that's an indicator that you would see in the reports. If they're reading much more quickly than is possible, so for example, if I've clicked Finish too soon,
your score is much higher than your goal. Please read the story again.
Or if my score is too high, this message will appear indicating that the score has been discarded. And if you start seeing practice not scored displayed multiple times in the scores box, that may be an indication that the student is not following instructions or the goal is set too high for them. So you'll want to make some adjustments as you monitor that scores box during practice. This is also an opportunity for students to practice any difficult words that they may have encountered previously during the cold timing or through the read-along step. They want to continue working on those words. And they do that, again, just by clicking on the words.
Unique, confuse, predators.
They can do that as many times as possible, or as necessary, I should say. So again, 3 to 10 times is what we would expect. If students are reading only once or twice and reaching their goal right away or quickly, that may be an indicator that the goal is set too low for them. If they are having to practice 11, 12, 13 times, having trouble reaching their goal, you may have to reset their story. If that's happening frequently, their goal may be too high for them and you may need to adjust that downward. So after the bell rings, we'll click on the last word read correctly.
Click on the last word you read when the bell sounded. You've reached your goal. You've finished all your practices. Click Start Timing to practice again, or click Next to continue.
So once I've met my goal, I can move forward.
Click the best answer, and then click Next.
And now we're going to measure comprehension through the quiz and then the retell in the sequenced and the idiom series. The quiz consists of multiple choice and short answer questions. You'll have anywhere between 5 to 9 quiz questions. The multiple choice questions provide audio feedback when students answers. So I'll click on zebra stripes are unique and useful and click Next. So that casino sound means I've answered that question correctly. And that sound, that boop boop, means I've answered it incorrectly. Notice that students have access to the story text. as well as the vocabulary when answering their quiz questions. So some of our quiz questions focus on vocabulary, and obviously they can click to assist them in answering the questions.
Narrow. Narrow means thin or not wide.
So I'll answer thin. Another thing to note is that each of the quiz questions will focus on a specific comprehension skill, and you'll be able to evaluate those skills in the reports. We also have some open-ended questions where students have to type their answer and teachers evaluate during the pass step. We have sorting and matching. These are vocabulary terms. And fill in the blank in this case, also vocabulary.
Retell or summarize the story in your own words. Click Review Story if you want to read the story again.
The retell is another way that we evaluate students' comprehension. We ask the students to summarize the story in their own words. They can click on Review Story to take a look at the story text, but they can't keep the story text visible on the screen while they're typing. What they type is subjective. You will have your own rubric for what you're looking for. There's no artificial intelligence or spell check or anything like that. We do, however, count the number of words typed into that box and display it for you in one of the reports. You'll evaluate this during the pass step.
Now you're ready to pass. Read the story and play Wordtastic until your teacher comes to pass you on this story.
So just
Click
as
Start Timing and begin reading.
Just as in the cold timing step, when teacher is required, the student is kind of stuck until teacher comes to conduct the timing. So whenever you see this red bar during the cold timing or the hot timing, student is in some kind of a waiting activity. So in cold timing it was Wordtastic, here in hot timing it's practicing. And actually during the hot timing, students can alternate between practice and Wordtastic simply by clicking next when they're done with the practice. But again, shouldn't be here for too long. When you're available, you'll click on Conduct Past Activities, type in your credentials, and now you're sitting with the student for the final read. We're going to be evaluating the student on 5 criteria to determine whether they can move to the next lesson, to the next story. So just as in placement, student is reading aloud to the teachers. There's no clicking on difficult words here. Teacher is simply marking down on a separate record sheet how many words the student mispronounced or skipped. After the bell rings and you click on the last word the student read correctly, you'll enter in the number of missed words here in this little indicator. You'll also enter for the first time an expression score, and we'll provide you with a rubric that you can use to determine whether their expression and phrasing is appropriate as a requirement for passing the story. Because remember, fluency consists of rate, accuracy, and expression. In addition, students will have to have answered all of the quiz questions correctly and responded to the retell appropriately.
Click on the last word you read when the bell sounded.
So I'll click on the last word read. Let's say the student missed 3 words. Here is the expression scale. They have to score 2 or higher on the scale. So I've met all of my fluency criteria. 3 or fewer errors, 2 or higher in expression, and I'm reading at the goal rate assigned by the teacher. Here's my cold and hot timing scores, available in a graph. This is where teacher would evaluate any open-ended questions with the students to determine whether they need to be re-answered. This is where you evaluate the retell. And the Pass Review Work screen provides you with an overview of how the student performed during this lesson. So all of the steps are represented here. For example, how many practices, how many difficult words, how they performed in the practice, how they did in the quiz, etc. So you can print this out from here or from the staff member module. You can review their fluency scores over time. You can see how they're performing on their quiz, see how the quiz questions are broken out by comprehension skill, and then number of words used in retell. If a student did not meet any of the 5 criteria for passing, you can assign them some additional work, or you can pass them with current scores. So in this case, I'll have Melissa go back and re-answer one of her quiz questions.
Click the best answer, and then click Next. Congratulations! You passed this story. Click Done to finish.
And once I've completed this story, I can view a certificate that provides me with badges and ribbons for each of the 5 criteria. This is printable. You can print it out or save it as a PDF file from the staff member module.
Please select a story.
Now that I've completed it, it's listed as passed, and I can't do it again. I move to a different story in the set. So that's a lesson. This lesson in the sequence series is pretty much exactly the same in all of the sequence series levels, except for the content becomes more challenging. Obviously, stories are longer, more quiz questions, more vocabulary at the higher levels. Also, the idiom series works the same way, just the content, again, is focused on American language idioms. The phonics series levels are slightly different. They begin with a short phonics lesson, and instead of a retell, there's a word list where students read from a grid, a list of words down and across, and the words all emphasize and reinforce that phonics element for that passage. So I'm going to log back in as a teacher, as a staff member. Once students have completed a number of stories, you want to evaluate their progress. You go to the reports section, report screen, and this is where you can find the reports to assist you in monitoring progress. Students at a glance shows you a list of students, 1 or more students, and the key data points to assist you in determining whether level and goal changes are required. Student level reports break that down for individual students into more detailed reports per level. You can view those in either graph or table format. Story details is similar to that review work screen that I showed you earlier. So you kind of go from high level to mid-level to very detailed kinds of reports. You can find all of our reports as samples on our website. If you just go to the main Read Naturally Live page on readnaturally.com, there's a sample reports tab on that page, and you can view sample reports to get a better sense of what the data is going to look like. So this is the Students at a Glance report. This is the Student Level Summary report. Breaks it down, as I said earlier, into very detailed for each story. And you can view that information graphically as well. So those are the reports. I want to end by showing you our Read Live Help page. You can access Read Live Help from within the program, either by clicking on Help from the bottom of the screen when you're logged in as a staff member, or you can access it from our Orientation and Resources page. So Read Live Help, and Help. So what's on the Read Live Help page? A series of videos that you can watch to use for training purposes. Everything from setting up an account for the account administrator to working through a story. And even some of these videos you can share with parents to show them how their child will be using the program. On the right side, you'll find detailed information including a user guide. So pretty much any question you might have would be listed there. If you're stuck, that would be one of the first places I would look at. We have some individualized help topics like conducting a 1-minute timing, which will provide you with information about how to count errors. We have recorded webinars. We have a free Read Naturally Live online course. I highly recommend this at the beginning of the school year whenever a new teacher is onboarded. It takes about 3 hours. It's free. You access it from our website, and you can stop and start. So if you just have 20 minutes to work in the online course, you can stop after 20 and come back later to work additionally. You receive a certificate after completing this course. Finally, we have a set of training videos and lesson plans and posters to assist you in teaching your kids how to use the program. And other job aids. That poster I mentioned to you earlier is available from the STEPS poster, welcome letters. There's even a set of crossword puzzles that you can print out that are useful as another waiting time activity for students as they're waiting for you during the cold timing and the pass timing. So again, that's the Read Live help page. Once you found it, I would just bookmark it and keep it handy so you don't have to pop into the program to launch it. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to bring up my slide again. Here's the Read Live Help resources, but I want to bring up my contact information for you. If you have questions after our session, and as I said, I'll try to get back to those of you that entered questions into the question panel, feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm here to assist you. I hope this webinar was useful to you. After you log off of my Gotowebinar meeting here, I would appreciate it if you would take a few minutes to complete the survey, a few short questions to help us improve webinars in the future. Thanks again, everyone, for your time and attention. Hope you have a great school year, and please be on the lookout for additional webinars as we move through the school year, and look for our Read Live our Read Live newsletters that we send out monthly. Thanks again. Take care. Have a great day.